Hello and welcome, guys, to another episode. We'll be discussing a lot of things this week that have happened this week in MMA. Some of it will be kind of being back in the testing pool. People have, but it's not limited to that. I mean, it's more or less to everything. And one of the things is I don't actually follow a lot of the gossip, so I don't have all the answers for you, but I will give my opinion on it. This is the first time I will actually delve into some of the gossip, but I'll just give my opinions on what I see, what I see and what I think is going on, just from my experiences working in MMA and working in and around elite sport. So we'll kick off, guys, with some of the questions. So first one says, John Wayne says, Conor has entered the USADA. It will take 6 months, which is April 2024, which is UFC 300. He will want to headline, but UFC will want a few title fights, but he won't want to split the pay-per-view buys. What will the UFC do? I think that they'll either get Conor to carry the card himself. I don't know. I don't know, because I also think Conor should probably headline his own card, and he's still going to get a cut of the pay-per-view, and it'd still be it's basically as big as he wants it to be. So I don't know. I don't know that it will be necessarily UFC 300 that he'll be back and ready for, but it could be. I don't know that he'd headline UFC 300 when you have the other guys in there. I'm not sure. I'm not sure what they will do. It's going to be interesting to see what happens between now and then as well with him, and going back into full pelt training. I think it's an interesting thing with MMA, and I have no proof that Conor McGregor is on performance-enhancing drugs, so I'd just like to clarify that. But it is an interesting thing in MMA that people can either just skip, you can just skip the fact that the USADA came to test you. You just say you weren't there. You're not there. I don't know what happened. And you just, you get 3 of those in a calendar year, and it's just an interesting thing. And it's an interesting thing that you can jump out of the testing pool, and it's kind of a given that everyone knows that you're gearing off your nut, and then you have 6 months to get back in the testing pool. People don't understand the amount of gains you can make in that time. Not just, it's not even physical strength, it's the technical abilities as well, and healing if you've been injured. Nathan Gorman says, what do you make of Conor's recent sparring video? He looked okay, his legs seemed okay, plus the Weasel made a video on it. I haven't actually seen the Weasel's video on it. The Weasel's very, very good, so shout out to the Weasel. Conor always looks good. He's smart with the way he trains. He does do some hard sparring, but he also has a lot of movement incorporated into his training, where he's not going full pelt with his training. So I think he's always going to look good at training. It's hard to say until they're in the fight how it's going to be for him in once he's kicking and once he's moving and pivoting and all sorts of stuff. That's just going to be an interesting situation. Madara says, what do you make of Chandler telling Helwani that he will wait for Conor? Do you think he should wait, considering how long he's waited already? I don't think that Chandler is waiting for Conor because it means a title fight or it means anything other than a big payday, if that makes sense. I don't think it means anything other than that. So yeah, he should wait. I don't even think the outcome matters. I think he'd rather win, but by the time that they fight, he's going to be close to 38, if not, something in there. So I don't think it matters for Chandler. Chandler's there for the payday. So I definitely think that he'll wait for sure. Mario says, should Conor wait and see what happens between Paddy and Tony? And if Tony wins, fight Tony because it will be an easier fight than Chandler, or does he owe Chandler a fight? I don't think he owes Chandler a fight, per se. I don't think so necessarily. I just don't think that if Conor fights Tony, it'll have the same. If he beats Chandler, it's like a legitimate win, irrespective of what division. It's not really a lightweight win if they fight at welterweight, for instance. I'm just giving that example, but it's Michael Chandler. Michael Chandler's in that mix. He's in that group of lightweights that kind of keep fighting each other. So, no, Chandler's a win, like a proper win. I don't think everyone will watch a Tony Ferguson-McGregor fight. You just will. but I don't think it has the same impact. Like if he beats Chandler, he's fighting for the title. There's no question about it. Pepgard says Benil Dariush and Ali Abdelaziz said a fight between Benil and Arman has been agreed. What are your thoughts on that matchup? I think it's a very, very, very good matchup. People talk about Benil getting smashed by Charles Oliveira, but he had he was doing really well in that fight. He had really good moments in that fight. I think it's going to be hard because Sarukian is a good wrestler, but Gamrot had all sorts of problems with Dariush. Dariush can wrestle himself, and then he's got very high-level credentials in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I think he won worlds in Nogi. Let me just check so I'm not making stuff up. But no, I'm pretty sure he won worlds as a brown belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, which is no mean feat. Like it's going to take a very serious type of grappler to impose their will on him, and he did very, very, very well. Yeah, so here we go. So yeah, at Browns he won. So he won gold at brown belt in no-gi and a silver at brown belt in gi. So apart from a whole bunch of other accolades, but they're like his major accolades. So you're talking about a very, very serious grappler. I don't know, and I think that his hands are tidier than Sarukian's. So I think it'll be a very tough fight for Dariush, for Sarukian. I don't think Sarukian necessarily gets past Dariush. And Dariush is whilst Dariush seems like he's been around forever, and he's not young, he's 34, but he just seems like he's way older. He just seems like he's been there forever, and he kind of looks a little bit older, but he's still, in good fighting shape. Death Note says Colby gave an interview with Submission Radio this week. He doubled down on the Islam call out and dismissed Leon Edwards. Sorry, I just missed something here. How dangerous is it to overlook Leon, who beat Kamaru twice? I don't think Colby's overlooking. I don't think Colby's overlooking Edwards at all. Like, he might say he is, but I highly doubt that he is. And I think that's a lot of showmanship on Colby's part, and good for him. And it's good for him to be setting himself up a fight with Islam, So there, I don't think he's overlooking Leon at all. He's not stupid. He knows what it is. Jordan Martinez says, Islam said he has the key to beat Charles. All he has to do is open the door, put pressure, and make Charles feel his power, and he will give up. Thoughts on Islam's mindset going into the rematch? Again, I don't know what his actual mindset is. You know what I mean? Like, again, I don't know how much stuff it's bravado, how much he actually believes it. Who knows? But I do know that whilst that may be true, what he's saying to a certain degree, again, I think that it's not that easy to do. And when MMA has a lot of revisionist history, so it's when you look at it, people go, he just smashed a guy. He just did it easily. He looked like he did it easily after the fight. He threw Charles around a fair bit, but Charles had his moments in that fight. You got to remember, Charles is long and Charles hits hard himself, and he had some good moments. He did some really good wrestle ups, did Charles. It's just a question, I think, and I've said this before, I think with Islam, he catches people out with how tidy his hands are, and he's heavy-handed. And I think that catches people out. I think it caught Volkanovski out the same way that Islam, I think, got caught out by Volkanovski with how hard it was taking him down. And I think Volkanovski got caught out a little bit with how good Islam's striking was, how tidy it was, how confident he was in it. That would have thrown Charles off a little bit, I think, because I didn't think that Islam's striking would be that much necessary. I don't know if it was that much better, but I didn't think he'd be that composed under fire the way he was with Charles. So now if Charles can, fix a few things in there, it could be a completely different fight. So I'm not sure. The problem I see with Charles is that there's a clear-cut path to victory for Islam, right? And that is he can grapple, he can wrestle, like out-wrestle Charles, and Charles has been held down by lesser fighters, in my opinion, lesser fighters than Islam, lesser grapplers than Islam, or smaller guys than Islam. He has had a tendency to do that. He does capitulate the bottom position a lot. And so that's a clear path to victory, right? But that doesn't mean that that's the only path to victory, and that Charles has no path to victory. Charles definitely has a path to victory. In fact, I'd say, like, Charles can do all of that. He can't out wrestle Islam, but he can definitely catch him in stuff. You know what I mean? And he can definitely catch him in a submission or knock him out. He can definitely do that. So it's not like he hasn't got that. Rob McKenzie said, "Good morning, sir. Always a pleasure." Good morning to you, Rob McKenzie. Please join me tomorrow for the Fight Companion, Dawson versus Green. We will be watching it, guys. If you haven't already, please like and subscribe and share the channel. Light Yagami says, Brett Okamoto told Islam that he visited Charles and wanted to watch the fight between him and Islam, but Charles refused to watch the fight again and said he will never watch the fight back. Thoughts? I don't know. Maybe he didn't want to sit there watching it with Brett Okamoto in a fight that at the end of the day wasn't his best of performances. That's pretty understandable. You don't always want to watch stuff like that with people. And again, like a lot of stuff, it doesn't matter. People process things completely different. It doesn't mean that, like, when people don't say something, it doesn't mean that they're not angry or they're not happy or they're not whatever. It's just the way people process stuff. I'm sure he's very, very aware of what happened in that fight and what things he could and couldn't do and what things he could do better and what areas he could exploit. I'm sure of that, Now, what that actually means, that he didn't want to fight back with Brett Okamoto, I probably can't blame him, I probably wouldn't want to watch it with him either. Nothing against Brett, but I'm saying if I got toasted the way he did versus Islam, why would I want to watch that with some dude? Max says, Islam seems very dismissive of Charles' chances. He said he's a bad matchup for him. Thoughts? He probably is a pretty bad matchup. He won it relatively quickly, but I don't think he's dismissive of Charles in the actual real world, There's a difference between what you say and what you actually think. I don't think he actually thinks that about Charles. I think, if anyone, he's very, very aware of how good Charles is on the ground as well. Like, I don't think he's under any illusion that Charles isn't dangerous on the ground. Charles upkicked him with some big shots. He's got a really, really good guard. He wrestled up from the bottom, threatened the leg lock, and then wrestled up from the bottom against Islam. He's very, very confident with his ability to fight off his back, which can be to his detriment as well. Having said that, like, Islam knows what that is on the ground, and he knows that Charles can crack standing up as well. He can definitely crack. He knows this. He's not stupid. I don't think he's that dismissive of him. He knows as well, and this is anyone who doesn't know this, like anyone that doesn't think this, that probably doesn't know anything about fighting. If you think that Charles, that fight couldn't be replayed a different way, like, you're crazy. Charles could have easily caught Islam. Easily. This is MMA. He could have easily caught Islam with a right hand, a left hook, a knee up the middle, whatever. He could have easily caught him with something. Islam hits the ground rattled, and Charles is on you, and then all of a sudden we're talking about how Charles is just unbeatable. That's MMA, you know what I mean? And the reality is those two could fight a few times. I give Islam the edge overall. It's a small body of work too. They've only fought once, but like, Islam could fight him again. They could fight 10 times. And I'd say Islam, just because he's got a clear path to victory, might win a couple more, but Charles will get wins in there for sure, guarantee you. What do you make of Islam saying? John Wayne says, what do you make of Islam saying if he follows the same game plan, he will beat Charles easily? I think if things work out for him the way that they should, he probably will. Like I said, he has a clear-cut path to victory in his grappling abilities, and in fact, he's got power in his hands. But that doesn't mean that Charles isn't going to do stuff himself, and that there's no path for victory for Charles. This is not true. Charles is very, very good. We did a breakdown, Lies, Dirty Lies, and Statistics. Please look at it. It has a statistical breakdown of each of these fighters and how it goes. And the thing with Charles, biggest thing, and I say this all the time, he's either feast or famine. Like, he's a guy that can beat anyone on any given day, like anyone, and lose to a middle of the pack guy as well. He's that kind of guy. Like, and that's not me that's not me cheering against him or putting him down. I'm saying, like, if he fought Khabib, I wouldn't say Khabib's going to smoke him, because I know that Charles has weapons that can make a very, very bad night for Khabib. But then there's other guys that maybe he loses to Sarukian. Maybe Sarukian takes him down for 3 rounds if it's a 3-round fight and wins. You don't not that Sarukian's the middle of the pack guy, but he's not the top end necessarily, not at this point. So this could happen. You know what I mean? Like that's Charles Oliveira like that. Like I don't. He's feast or famine kind of guy. Nathan Gorman says Islam will most likely have a counter-strike strategy like last time, considering how good it was. So what does Charles have to do differently in the stand-up to force Islam out of his defensive shell? I'm just going to go back to something. People are going to misquote me and say that I said that Sarukian would beat Charles. I'm not necessarily saying that, but I'm saying like Charles is a guy that can run hot and cold. With Islam, he's very methodical. Islam, for the most part, is Islam every time he turns up. What do I think? I'd like to see Charles' employment of body shots, and I'd like to see him front kick and tip, standing orthodox and front kick and tip Islam when Islam's in southpaw. I'd like to see more of that from Charles start to wear on the body of Islam. And generally what happens when you front kick or tip, a combination of both, especially the grappling that Charles has. Like Charles is not scared to be on his back, but don't want to be on your back. So if he front kicks to the open side, so I'm orthodox, I'm Charles, I'm orthodox, Islam is southpaw, I front kick or I teep, then Islam has to more than likely answer with a left hand coming through, like throwing lead left. And Charles can play with that space and start to walk Islam onto some shots. I think that's the best thing for him to do, is to be patient and kind of fight him at range and work the body with front kicks in that direction. I think something like that would be a good plan. He doesn't need my game planning. He's got very good coaches, and it's going to be interesting. But just that's probably one of the things that I would see. Madara said, Islam said to Brett about the fight with Colby, it's American wrestling versus Dagestani wrestling. He believes he will stop his wrestling and land many good punches. It's going to be interesting. They're very high-level grapplers, man. Very, very high-level grapplers. So Colby's we did a breakdown on this, by the way. I did a breakdown on lies, dirty lies, and statistics, so you can talk about it and see it. Islam's World Combat Sambo champion, and not only is Colby wrestling All-American, he also won a gold at the Filler Grappling World Tournament. So he's actually a world champion grappler as well. He's a very, very, very accomplished grappler, is Colby. So that's something you can't forget when you're dealing with him. And mechanically, again, like whilst it was a close fight between Islam and Volkanovski crushes people, absolutely fucking crushes people at featherweight. At lightweight, he still showed he's super strong, but he wasn't able to crush Islam. People are shocked that he did as well as he did, but he didn't crush him. Like he can't, like the mechanical advantage is lost. And I think Islam going up, I don't know that he'll have the same mechanical advantage. Sometimes people do better, but in general, I think it's people that are fast with their strikes and they go up and up a weight division against guys that are a little bit slower, and they tend to do well. I don't know that Islam, who has a grapple-heavy game, even though he's a good striker, I don't know that he can necessarily apply his wrestling in the same way the next division up, whereas Colby's used to doing it in that division, and he's not like, although a lot of the guys he has beat are a little bit older, a little bit past it, and a little bit good, like they're made for his kind of game, other than Kamaru. I still think he's got more experience fighting those bigger guys, and I don't know if Islam will carry over and have the same mechanical advantage that he would at lightweight. I don't know this because I haven't seen Islam against the lightweights. So it's going to be interesting. And Colby, I think, is underrated striking in that he's got good defense. He's got pretty good defense. He slides in and out of the way of the strikes, and then he's always got that threat of the wrestling. And it's a different style as well. Like his folk style, he basically turns a match into a folk style match. So I think he'd welcome having that grappling match, the grappling interaction with with Islam because it's just going to try and drag it into as deeper waters as he possibly can. I think that's what Colby will try and do. So I think it depends. It'll be that to me is a really interesting fight. Like just as who I am, I just love to see that fight. Mario says Islam said Charles refuses to watch a fight back because it reminds him of the time he gave up. I don't know, dude. I think Islam says that to say it, but Charles got clobbered, dude, in that before he got choked out. Like he got clobbered by Islam before when he dropped, and that's if you get hit like that, you're not defending submissions well, or he passed his guard like butter. The big difference there is that most people are very hesitant to enter Charles' guard, even if they clobber him. So he's able to recover there. Where Islam clobbered him and passed his guard. There's not many people that can do that. Pep Guard says, what do you make on Volkanovski saying Islam is a better MMA grappler than Charles and he beats Charles in a jiu-jitsu match? Sorry, I don't understand, Pep Guard. Maybe you could write that again. What do I make of Volkanovski saying Islam is a better MMA grappler than Charles and he beats Charles in a jiu-jitsu match? Who beats Charles in a jiu-jitsu match? Just if you could make that clear. I'm not sorry. Sorry, Pep Card, if you could write that again. Death Note said, Bobby Green said on Rampage Jackson's podcast that he believes Russian fighters take PEDs. He said he felt power like he never did before when he fought Islam. Thoughts? Well, this is fucking insane to say, like as in like not insane that the Russians take PEDs, but like the Americans take PEDs. Like I remember when people were saying the Pride fighters, they take steroids. And like at the same time, like there were TRT exemptions in the UFC. It's fucking mental. So yes, I think some of the Russians would take PEDs for sure, and the Americans glass houses and all that, and the Brazilians and all of them glass houses and all of that. Jordan Martinez says Ali Abdelaziz says he wants to see Henry Cejudo versus Merab. Thoughts on the matchup? I don't see enough of Cejudo to be able to give a real thing like right now, at bantamweight. I would say Merab, man. I would say Merab. He's a busier fighter, although he's been sitting out for a long time too. It's an interesting thing though as well because they're both getting to that age where like it's sink or swim. Like they're in their early 30s and whatnot. I don't know. I think Merab still comes with a level of intensity from being in there and competing all the time. Whereas, but having said that, Cejudo went in there and gave Aljamain all he could handle as well. So I think that's a really close fight, and I'm not sure who wins that fight. I tend to lean a little bit towards Merab, actually. Do you think USADA travels to the mountains of Dagestan to test those boys? Says like Yagami. Well, this is the interesting thing, dude, right? This is the interesting thing. It's not USADA that tests you there in Dagestan, and it's not USADA that tests you in Australia. It's an agency under the auspice of USADA, right? So it'd be whatever. Like here in Australia, it's USADA. In Russia, it'd be their version of it. In Cuba, it'd be their version of it. In Thailand, it'd be their version of it. So you've got a lot of these guys that are American and otherwise training abroad as well. So, I don't want to start pointing fingers. But yeah, they do travel, but it's not them. You know what I mean? And USADA is USADA. You know what I mean? Like I said, you can miss 3 tests. You can just miss them. And, you weren't there when they came to get you. When they come to test you, you weren't there. This happens. This is fucking thing. So yeah, you get a mark against your name, but that you don't get banned or anything. Max Jamil says Islam wants to fight Colby next, but his manager Ali wants him to fight Gaethje next. Conflict of interests. Laugh out loud. Yeah, I mean that's the game, isn't it? That's the game on the whole thing. Like it's everyone's trying to make money there. Rob McKenzie. Now, Rob. I don't think that's the only thing he's doing, though, Rob McKenzie. I don't think that cocaine would be the least of his problems if he was going to think. Cooper Marion says, you're going to watch 1FC tonight, Fab. Now, I'd love to watch 1FC, to be honest with you, but I can only do really one combat code because I've got 3 kids and work and the rest of it. So UFC, it has to be. I have to focus on that. John Wayne said, Bisping said on his podcast that Oliveira shouldn't throw wild shit at Islam. Thoughts, considering how Charles' game is revolved around throwing crazy stuff. Again, I don't necessarily agree with that. I don't think he's as methodical and as marked and measured as Islam, but I don't think he's like this wild, like just a maniac that just throws whatever. I think like I said, he's either feast or famine, and his stuff either works really well or he gets clipped, or things happen to him like that. But I don't necessarily agree with that. I think that he could have a little bit of a more measured approach. Like I said, like to me, I think he could have used teeps and other attacks. And then against Benil Dariush, he got taken down. He got held down by Benil Dariush, but early in the fight, he'd used the right hand, right high kick combination, which is really good, especially with orthodox to southpaw. But so no, he's not like dumb. Like he's just the way that he is like very feast or famine kind of guy. He's a very feast or famine fighter, and he gets clipped, man. He gets clipped a lot, but he clips people back. So when it works, and when it doesn't work, it doesn't work. And this is the X factor, kind of like a Yair Rodriguez, which is good and it's bad. But when it's good, it's really good. Nathan Gorman says, what do you make of the rumors of PFL buying Bellator? It seems like the UFC is so far ahead, it doesn't matter what anyone else does. I don't know about the PFL and or Bellator stepping into that space to take on the UFC. I don't know. I don't know the stuff that's going on in the background. I know that ONE FC seems to be gaining a lot of traction, and it seems to be gaining a lot of traction because it's not direct. Well, it is competing with the UFC, but it's not directly competing with the UFC in as much that it very much has a stronghold in the Asian market. And I think that traditionally the Asian market is different to the Western US market, so to speak. And I think there's things that resonate with the way that ONE FC is run, or the way that it's portrayed to be run, that resonate even with other elements of Western Europe, different cultures, Eastern Europe. I think there's still a lot of that. Having said that, the UFC has the biggest, like it's massive. You know what I mean? It's huge. The UFC, you would fight in the UFC just because of the amount of eyes on you. So it's massive. Thrill House, the man, says, peace to your fam. Fab needed the live chat today. Thank you, sir. No, I needed it too, my brother. So I'm glad you guys are on. Thank you so much, guys. Please like and subscribe if you haven't already. And please join me tomorrow as well. Darius is actually not as old as he looks. He has gray hairs too. I thought Darius was like 38. Yeah, that's my point. You know what I mean? When we were talking about Darius earlier. And howdy, Fab, says Ofon. Howdy, right back at you. Yeah, Benny, it looks like he's Darius Cooper Marion saying looks like he's turning 40 since he was 26. Yeah, it's wild looking back at his fights. When you look back, yeah, he was like in his late 20s. It looked like he was 56. Ofon says, Islam's striking defense seems more than sufficient to neutralize a lot of Oliveira's attacks. Yeah, he's very tidy. He's definitely very tidy. But Oliveira's got a lot of game too, dude. Like he does have a lot of game. The big difference, man, the big fucking difference, I think, is that if Islam catches Charles, that Charles doesn't have the same time to recover on the ground that he usually does. You know, being able to neutralize that. Like when Chandler cracked him, he should have just been out. Another thing is you don't know, like there's, I just heard some Gaethje talking about this somewhere. I think it was on Instagram or something. I just saw like a small clip of him talking about it. And I've always said this, man. And it's funny when he said that. And I thought, like, fuck yeah. You know what knocks people out, right? You know, you hit people on the chin and that end of that lever rocks the head and the fucking the brain rattles. It's got so much leverage, but you don't know what doesn't knock people out, because you see people get hit, right? And one fight they get hit like that, the whole thing, and they don't go down, and then another time they get hit right on the chin, rattled, and they're out. they're gone. Then they're asleep. You know what I mean? And you don't know. You don't know exactly. We don't know exactly what it is and how that works. So, it's one of those things. I think that Charles could easily catch Islam, knock him out. I think that, I think that he could easily catch him and knock him out. I definitely think that. And I think that the big thing is that when Islam catches someone, he can just follow them to the ground. He's not scared to follow him to the ground. I think Chandler could have easily knocked Charles out, but somehow he didn't. You know what I mean? When he cracked him, because he fucking cracked him, Madara says 5 years ago today was Khabib versus McGregor. In hindsight, did Conor do better than expected against Khabib than Gaethje, Poirier, and RDA? I honestly, I don't not rate McGregor. I just don't think he's like at his peak. I don't think he was like the way that people would speak was like he was unbeatable, which I never thought. But I've always rated McGregor. I've never thought that he wasn't good. You know what I mean? Like, having said all of that, when we talk about it, I think RDA did really well against Khabib. Different times, different Khabib, different aura, different. Well, I said aura, not era. Different aura that Khabib had when he fought RDA than what he did against Gaethje, say. And this matters. Like, you see, when a fighter like Israel, after the fight with Poirier, the middleweights in that division, not Poirier, fucking Poirier, Pereira, the middleweights in that division saw Israel different. And then now, after Strickland, I guarantee you that a lot of those middleweights are looking at it going, I could beat that guy. Whereas before, even guys that fought him were happy to take a decision, you know what I mean? A decision loss and claim it as a moral victory kind of thing. Like, I'm sure that this was the case, Whereas you could fucking hear the wheels turning, especially after Strickland, that you're like, if you're one of those middleweights, you'd be like, yeah, but I think I could do it too. So they're different fighters, they're different things. So RDA caught RDA caught Khabib on the way up, but he wasn't Khabib yet, and he gave Khabib it wasn't all his way, Khabib was out wrestling him, and then RDA was surviving. It was a tough fight by Khabib's own volition. McGregor's fight was huge. It was a huge fight, It was an absolutely huge fight. And McGregor was also at the top. So McGregor had a lot of hype and a lot of aura behind him. Although he'd taken some losses. He'd taken a loss, and he had taken some losses in his career up until that point. But still, he was definitely, coming up. I am not one of those people that thinks that really McGregor won any rounds in that fight. He just either didn't get beat up on the ground or held down. And then the round where they were both standing in the third round, it was just that Khabib hadn't grapple fucked him the way that he grapple fucked him first, second, and fourth. That's all it was. Like, I didn't see like an amazing performance from McGregor in as far as that was concerned. Did I think? And I didn't think Gaethje did that bad. Like, in my opinion, Gaethje came closer. Like with some of the bombs he hit Khabib with. It goes back to the thing I was saying. Like, he could have just caught Khabib on the chin and slept him, because some of those bombs that he threw, man, like, they were landing. They just didn't get caught flush. I know people have this like mythical belief that Khabib can't be knocked out. He can be knocked out. Of course he can. And so I don't think that Conor necessarily did even better than either one of those guys. And again, Conor could have caught Khabib, and then everything would be different. I think the big mistake for Conor, though, like, he showed really good wrestling defense, was he kind of re-engaged in the wrestling right at the start of that first round, and kept Khabib wrestling. I think there was a fraction of a moment when he could have stepped away. He could have got away from Khabib, and that might have changed things as well. When Conor was, Conor being fresh, being ready, being strong, being able to hit maybe with that left hand. Who knows? But I think that those three guys, they were very different fights. People watch fights, man. If you watch, one of the things I try to say to people, just because a fight finished in one round doesn't mean it wasn't a close fight. You know what I mean? It does not mean it wasn't a close fight. That's the way it goes. You can get fucking raped for 5 rounds and you're out of there. You know what I mean? Like it's not, but you stayed in the fight, but you're really out of there. You're not in it. And then you can go and fight for 4 minutes and it's a close fight, but you get knocked out. One of the best examples of one of the craziest fights, if you watch Paul Daly versus Nick Diaz back in the day, like that fight for while it lasted in that first round was one of the craziest first rounds that I've seen. And it was thing, but then Nick got the better of Paul as the fight progressed. But in that first round, it could have gone either way. When I say Paul Daly, actually, it just makes me laugh when we talk about the UFC and you talk about stuff like Paul Daly threw a punch at Koscheck after the fight ended, after the bell. And it was such a massive fucking thing. He was never allowed to fight thing. And Conor and Khabib had a fucking brawl, like a brawl where Khabib jumped out of the octagon, like all sorts of shit. Everyone saw it. And it was all good. It's just funny. Ofon says it would also not be good to watch it with Brett because he may accidentally give away strategy for the next fight. At this point, I'd love to see Volk versus McGregor before Poirier ruins his stomach with the hot sauce. I just don't think you can take too much of it where a fighter wants to watch a fight that they didn't do well in with some guy. That's number one. Volk versus McGregor would be interesting. That fight, I think, would have been more interesting at featherweight, to be honest with you. I think that fight would have been more interesting at featherweight back in the day. I think nowadays it doesn't have the same thing because it'd have to be a lightweight. And I don't think that, to me, Volkanovski is the greatest featherweight of all time. Do you know what I mean? Like, whether he can win a belt or not at lightweight, great. But I don't see him having as dominant a run at lightweight as he did at featherweight. Otherwise he would have stayed at lightweight. But earlier in his career as a featherweight, dude, he's a fucking gorilla, dude. He's a gorilla. I've dealt with Volkanovski. I've known him since he was a little kid. And he's just like a little brick, man. He's just a little brick. I cannot even begin. It'd be fucking terrifying for those little featherweights to be grabbed by someone like Volkanovski. It'd feel like your dad's grabbing you at Kmart when you're being naughty. Pepgard says, what are your thoughts on Jones versus Stipe? How will Stipe bypass Jones' reach and distance management with his kicks and long-range attacks? Is Gaston versus Adesanya a good blueprint for Stipe? A couple of things. We're going to do a breakdown on that, on lies, dirty lies, and statistics. I think that, no offense to Gastelum, but Stipe is a way, way different level fighter than Gastelum. I think Gastelum's won a handful of fights in the last 6-7 years, 6 years or something. Nothing against his. And the last fight he fought with the guy, Strickland's training partner, I fucking really like him as a fighter. But you know who I'm talking about. Curtis, when he fought Curtis, that fight don't think he should have won because it was a big head clash, and that's what dropped Curtis. If that had been maybe a no contest, or even if that hadn't happened, I don't think he would have beat Curtis. So I don't think that they're even similar to the same kind of fighters. I think that Stipe is a much better student of the game, and much more professional, and he's able to put his punches and put his kicks together and put his wrestling together. Having said everything that I just said, what are my thoughts on that fight? It's hard, man. I haven't seen enough of Jones at heavyweight. I've seen him get clobbered a fair bit in light heavyweight as well. I've seen him not be able to get out of the way of when he fought Reyes, when he fought Thiago Santos, when he fought a lot of these guys. While Stipe is not Stipe is not like long. He hasn't got the reach advantage over Jones, but he's still bigger than a lot of the light heavyweights. Just a bigger guy. And when people go, no, so and so walks at a heavyweight, it's not just that, dude. Like people are built different. You can weigh the same, but you're made differently. If you're a light heavyweight, if you're a true light heavyweight and you're a true middleweight, the light heavyweight guy is a bigger person, just a bigger frame, bigger guy, bigger head, bigger fucking joints, bigger hands. It's just a bigger guy. And Stipe is a bigger guy. The problem is that they're both getting older and Stipe is older again. So I think Stipe is going to have problems with Jones. It's going to be interesting to see if Jones is going to be able to get him down. The punching power and how tidy Stipe's boxing is, though, once he gets inside, can be a problem, because you see Jones got a solid chin, but he does get hit. So that's an interesting one. I just don't know. I haven't seen Stipe fight for a long time. I haven't seen him fight for a very long time, and he's not young. So I have to go with Jones, but we will do a breakdown on that very, very soon. Matt says, Charles has the most submissions in UFC history. He can catch anyone on his day. It wasn't his day last fight, but he has the skills to stop anyone in the division. Absolutely. This is insane to think otherwise. I mean, you can favor Islam. That's fair, and I kind of do, but man, Charles can stop anyone. Ofon says, Stipe doesn't have the movement that Gastelum has, man. Dude, Gastelum's a middleweight and a welterweight, and the other dude's a heavyweight. Stipe's movement for a heavyweight is pretty fucking good, dude. Pretty good. Like, that's like saying Adesanya doesn't have the movement that Demetrius Johnson has, or that TJ Dillashaw has, or Dominic Cruz has. Of course not. They're just completely different thing. But does Adesanya move well at middleweight? Fuck yeah, 100%. Jones doesn't even move the same at heavyweight that he did at light heavyweight, So taking that into account, like, you can't even compare the two. You can't, like, Gastelum and Stipe is like not the same. And I don't think, like, people forget this fight with Gastelum. I think they romanticize it. Gastelum had a couple of really good moments in that fight, but he got fucking bashed by Adesanya towards the end of the fight. Like, he got dropped and hurt bad, like really, 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 really bad. If he didn't have, like, the skull that he has and the heart that he has, he's got a big heart, but Adesanya fucking pumped him, should have stopped him. If that fight went a little bit longer, probably would have stopped him. Like, he really, really cracked him. You know what I mean? Watch that fight for sure. Like, Gastelum had moments in the fight. He had moments, but he didn't have like Adesanya cracked him. Like, really, really cracked him. So Ofon says he can't consider it a blueprint if he doesn't have the skills to implement them. I just think it's different. It's a very, very different fighter. Very, very different fighter. But I think that Stipe is Stipe is a really, really, really good heavyweight. I just don't think that he's at his prime anymore. Daniel Zamet says, Darius said on LT live chat that Tony Ferguson seemed to have a noticeable delay every time he was hit before resetting and firing back, saying it looked like a glitch in the system. To me, Tony Ferguson shouldn't be fighting. I don't think it's right or professional to even let him fight. That's my opinion. And people, when they say this, right, when they say like, well, it's up to him and blah, 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 you can't ask him if he wants to fight. It's like asking my daughter if she wants chocolate cake. She wants chocolate cake. Daniel Zaman says, have you ever noticed in the gym, almost reminds me of talking to alcoholics, where I would notice a blanked delay before they visually seem to physically snap out of it before answering. I haven't noticed it in gyms that I've owned or worked in at that time, but I've had friends that fight, and I've had friends that play rugby league, and I did a podcast with Willie Tonga, and he speaks about it. He's been knocked out like 70 times. Willie Tonga's a professional rugby league player. He's been knocked out a whole bunch of times, and he was talking about like just waking up and not knowing where he was, and having all sorts of mental health issues and that. So yes, unfortunately, I have seen that in with people. Daniel says, no, not Daniel. Max Jamil says, thoughts on Blades versus Almeida. Seems like bad matchup for Almeida considering how big Blades is and how good of a wrestler he is, and Almeida's strength is grappling. Thoughts? Yeah, I tend to think the same thing. I think Blades is kind of unlucky and underrated in a way. He's a very, very good grappler wrestler. He's going to try and get on top, and he can do some serious damage. I've seen him in real life at a fight night. He was cutting weight at the time. He was cutting weight for heavyweight, and dude's a real big. I was at the Havana Institute of Sport, and I was lucky to meet Mihan Lopez. And these guys, like when you see them from really far away, and they're super heavyweights, they don't look big. They're like proportionally big guys, And he was the same thing. Blades didn't look massive until you get close to him, and you're like, holy fuck, this guy's huge, man. He really is big. So no, I kind of favor Blades. I think I favor Blades. We're going to do a breakdown on that this Tuesday will be the Blades breakdown. Daniel Zamet, also any interest in having Luke Thomas on for a technical breakdown or discussion, since he seems to be the most technically inclined of the MMA media personalities? I don't know, man. I never thought of that. I'm not going to before when I was coaching Robin, that I was actually meant to be on that show, but he messaged me on my Facebook and I never checked it. Yeah, I don't know. I never thought of how do I say this? I don't know that it's the same kind of conversation necessarily. You know what I mean? Yeah. Anyways, Ophon says, so Islam doesn't want to challenge Leon if he wins. I don't know. B. Johnson says, Islam is the one guy who'd out-scramble Colby. Maybe. I don't know that he'd out-scramble him, though, Mr. Johnson, simply because the style of grappling, of folk style, is built in and around scrambles, whereas Sambo is a mixture, there's a Russian system that literally was a mixture between freestyle wrestling and judo, which are more about control. There is scramble in it, but it's more about control and holding down that person, whereas and it does have leg locks thrown in there as well. Whereas folk style wrestling, I'm giving a quick fucking thing. Whereas folk style wrestling, and it's a style that you see a lot of in the UFC, has a lot the point system is not just on takedowns, but it's on riding, so you holding the person down, so to speak, so riding them out without being able to link your hands on the ground, and then escapes. So if you can escape from the bottom because they can't link their hands, you escape from the bottom, then you get points. If the person on top can hold you down without linking his hands, he gets points. So the scrambling is very, very much, in my opinion, in a folk style wrestler's favor. That isn't to say that Islam can't win superior positions. This is not what I'm saying. I think Islam absolutely can. I think that there's a couple of interesting things. There's going to be, how does Islam do that? Does he carry that same mechanical advantage over the lightweight? Over the welterweight that he had at lightweight? I don't know. I think that's the same thing, B. Johnson, as what you said. Charles says, Islam has had the closest striking match with Volkanovski by a wide margin. Based on that, would you say he can safely neutralize Charles Oliveira? I think they're very different strikers. Very different strikers, There's also, I don't believe that Volkanovski, they're very different, dude. They're very they couldn't be more fucking different. You know what I mean? In some ways, I think Charles is more dangerous grappler than Islam, because Charles will just go for some. He does stuff, man, that you're watching him fight MMA, and if you can, you have to appreciate this. You watch Charles Oliveira fight in the UFC against the best fucking guys, and he's getting fucking ground and pounded, and he does shit that you look at and you go, I'm gonna try that in the neck just in class with some fucking blue belt. You know what I mean? I'm gonna try and do what Charles Oliveira did in that fight. I'm going to try and apply that with someone not striking me that's not even that good of a grappler and see if I can do it. That's what Charles does, you know. So it's a very, very different type of striking to Volkanovski. And it's also the fact of his grappling ability is very different. And that gives you a lot of different X factors. So I think it's very hard to take one from one. Hofon says, shows how insane Volkanovski is at 145 if he can still do well versus someone who's considered the strongest wrestler at 155. Yeah, I don't know if he's the best wrestler at 155, to be honest with you. I don't know this. Just wrestling alone, because you got to understand, he's not just wrestling. He's also has really good striking, really good submissions. So these things allow him to also apply strong wrestling. Probably straight wrestling. I don't know that he beats Sarukian or that he beats Gamrot. I don't know this. But yeah, no, it does show you what it would have been, what it would be like for those featherweights with his gorilla on you, for sure. Okay, I'm just going to skip a couple. Should Belal and Gaethje leave Ali Abdulaziz if Makhachev vs Colby gets made, considering you could do Islam versus Gaethje and Colby versus Belal, plus all three are managed by Ali? The ball's in Ali's court, in my opinion. Thoughts? I don't know. I can't say enough on that, you know, because you don't know some of the fights that he gets for his fighters, you know, as well. So you don't know. He's also playing, you know, a whole bunch of stuff. It's up to UFC to do the fights at the end of the day. If you know, it's like if you ask me, will I do something for X amount of money and I ask for double that, you can't get angry at me. You can just not pay me. You know, Ali Abdulaziz is going to present what he wants to the UFC, and it's up to UFC to put the fights on. You know, and if he can get the most amount of his guys on a card, then he's going to do that. Charles says, too right, but it's also surprising Islam was quick enough to strike with Volk. I would have expected a smothering wrestling performance all 5 rounds. Again, I don't think it's enough samples. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's only one fight, and I do think that they both kind of caught each other out. I do think that. It might be interesting to see them fighting somewhere else, not necessarily in Perth. I think it does matter where you fight to a certain degree. I think even Sydney would have been easier for Volkanovski as well, like just giving examples, or neutral ground like Vegas or something. That would probably be an interesting fight. Because in fairness, man, people don't understand this. Even Perth still has a time difference for us from Sydney. It's not that close. It's like a 5.5 hour flight. So it would be interesting to see him like in neutral grounds, etc. And I'd like to see that fight again, you know, like just from not I want him to make it, but I'd like to see it again play out a few times, because I do think that they kind of caught each other out. Ofon, I'm not even going to read what you just wrote. TRT Vitor Belfort was fucking awesome. What a destroyer, says Matt. Yeah, sorry, boys. I'm just going to skip a couple. I'm sorry if I skipped you. Pep Guard says, when Khabib called out Volk after Islam beat Charles, I thought it was strange after dominating Charles they would call out a smaller guy. He put Islam in a lose-lose situation. Thoughts? I don't know, because Charles is not Charles. Volkanovski was the number one guy in the world at the time, the number one pound for pound, super fight. But I do agree, like, I don't really see why he fought necessarily that, because it wasn't going to be an easy fight, and there's not a lot to gain. So I don't really understand the mechanics behind that. Although it was a big fight, you know, and it was a super watched fight. We'll give you that for sure. I'm gonna go scroll down a little bit. Jordan Martinez says, what do you make of Dustin Poirier not wanting to fight Beneil Dariush because it doesn't excite him? There's not many fighters for Dustin to fight. Who should he fight next? I don't know. There's, you know, like there's, I was saying this, people asking me, I'm going to talk, like I'm kind of segueing to like people asking me, who would you like to see these guys at middleweight fight each other next? And it's the same thing I see with the guys at lightweight. I don't know. I don't want to see a merry-go-round of the top 4 or 5 guys just going around fighting each other. I don't necessarily want to see that. I want to see maybe the guys in the top 5 to 10 fighting these guys all that are in the top 5 to 1 or whatever, or even 12 down to 1. Like, I'd like to see more movement there. Because for years you just watched like 4 or 5 guys in the lightweight division fight each other. And then Benil Dariush had won like 8 or 9 fights in a row, ninth one being his loss against Charles, in a title eliminator. Jesus, that's like so many fights. A guy's getting title shots off 4 or 5 wins in a row. Less sometimes. So I don't care, but I'd like to see him fight down the card. You know what I mean? I'd like to see him fight, I don't know, a Gamrot, a Dariush, a Dariush, a fucking what do you call him? Sarukian. Like, I'd like to see him fight one of those guys, man. I don't want to just keep it going around in a circle, like fighting them. Same as like when you're asking me, I'd like to see in a middleweight, I'd like to see Imavov, Aliskarov, Bo Nickel, Malkoon. What's that other fellow that beat Malkoon? What's his name? Oh, fucking hell, Brendan Allen. These guys, I'd like to see them fight up the card. I'd like to see that. I'd like to see. That's what I want to see. They're the guys I want to see fight. Not just them, but I don't want them to fight each other. I'm not a real big fan of watching Imavov and Aliskarov fight each other. I would rather see them fighting up the card. Aliskarov, fair enough, he has to win some fights in the UFC, but still, man, I want to see these guys fighting the top guys, because a lot of the times you see, oh shit, that's how good the guy was. Imavov, I think, has all the potential to be a champion in that division. He's very young. He's got the good frame, fights. He fought Strickland and lost, in a fucking decent fight, in a pretty decent fight, and nobody gave him any credit. Everyone's like, fucking shit, blah, 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 blah. Strickland then went out and beat up Adesanya. Not killed him, didn't smash Adesanya, but beat him soundly. So Imavov's win, or loss, Imavov's loss has aged quite well. So it just goes to show you, well, fuck, let's see him fight someone then. That's how I feel about it. I'm just skipping a few. Sorry, guys. I'm gonna go down a little bit. Sorry if I missed you guys. Sorry. Ali Shukri says, "Is rugby league that dangerous?" Damn, explains why Volk is so tough. Rugby league, super dangerous sport. Rugby league, rugby union, super dangerous sport. Rugby league in particular, I never played union that much. I played union a little bit. Played rugby league like for school and even outside of school a little bit. I wasn't very good. I'm not made for collisions, but rugby league is like all about collision. Like it's not. So say there are sports, right, where collision it might happen. In rugby league, the point of it is collision. And this is what makes it super dangerous, super, super dangerous. I think Volkanovski is just tough because he's tough, like Ofon says, like football, but worse without as many pads. And I think the pads would make it worse. The pads will make the hits worse because you can hit with your helmet in like gridiron. And like when people said you can't spike, I know you think it's not that. I'm talking about like your head can clash. You know what I mean? The big pads make you basically a fucking cannonball that you can throw yourself at. You can't do that in rugby league. So it hurts you to do that. So the impact is not as necessarily as bad as in like the amount of impact. So I think probably the shake on your head isn't as bad, but it's still horrific, dude. It's still fucking horrific. Like the guys are so big, so fast, so fucking strong. Like it's horrific, especially I think in the younger age groups coming up. Like you have kids that are just monsters playing against kids that don't even fucking play football properly. You know what I mean? And so you're getting hit in ways that you just fucking shouldn't happen. I'm sorry, I'm going to skip a few and we're going to run out of time here, guys, because I'm just trying to keep it under an hour, I do. And so I apologize, guys, for any of this. What I'm going to try and do is to start doing this once a week. So I'm going to try and do this once a week, the Lies, Dirty Lies and Statistics once a week, and the Fight Companion once a week. So please, guys, join us. If you haven't already, please like and subscribe. Tell all your friends about it. Matt says, I've played League and Union. League is much faster and brutal, and there's no breaks. It's fucking brutal. And if you play in Southwest Sydney, it makes me laugh. I was listening to Brendan Schaub talking about Jared Hayne, right? Irrespective of Jared Hayne. And he's talking about like, yeah, Jared Hayne looked good because, you know, in Australia, and this is his words, not mine. I don't fucking agree with him, not even fucking for 1 second. And he goes, he's playing rugby league against slow fucking white guys, you know, in his fucking voice. And I was thinking like, more than like the NRL, which is our Premier League thing, it's like 70% Islanders and Aboriginals. There are white guys, man, and those white guys are fucking tough too, you know? And I was thinking like you got no fucking idea. Like if you didn't grow up here in Sydney, if you didn't grow up in Southwest Sydney, you have no fucking idea. You have no fucking clue what, and don't get offended, right? If you're not an Islander, I'm not an Islander. But I'm just talking specifically about Islanders. You got no fucking idea. They also the most overrepresented people in the NFL too, the Pacific Islanders. As a percentage, like American Samoans as a percentage. But then you have Tongans, you have like all these other dudes as well. If you never played football against Pacific Islanders, dude, you haven't lived, my friend. You haven't lived. Man, they're not made the same fucking way. And some white dudes that are made like that should have been fucking Vikings 1,000 years ago. Let's be real. Like there are some fucking, you know, big, strong white boys as well. If you played rugby league in Australia, you know this. You know, this is not a fucking, like you're a good athlete here. Like there's an Aboriginal fellow, Greg Inglis, I've been around athletes all over the world. One of the best athletes I've seen was Greg Inglis, man. He's just a fucking freak of nature, dude. A proper freak of nature. I've never really seen someone like him like that. Look, I've seen amazing athletes. I'm not saying he's the best ever, but like when I was watching him, you know, sometimes you think like, could I have made it if my dad had driven me to football every day or fucking whatever? And I was just watching him and I was thinking, not if Greg is going to play your position. Greg could have just followed me around to every sport that I played ever and just said, I'm having his position, just kept taking his position, no matter what fucking sport. This guy was a freak of fucking nature, dude. Like nothing, like just... He's not an Islander. He's Aboriginal guy, and it's different animals. So when he said that, when Brendan Schaub said that, I was like, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, it's just fucking so dumb. You know, I don't even like, you know, people hate on him. I don't hate on him. But when he said that about Jared Hayne and that, I was like, you're fucking so fucking dumb, dude. You like to say that. That's such a weird fucking thing to say when you know nothing of the background that he's coming from. And the NRL is literally like the players from 20 or 30% white, you know? Not that it fucking matters. I don't even give a shit. Like, I think that's so fucking stupid anyways when you start in on that. Like, when you start to work out the percentage of what you are or whatever, it's just fucking dumb. It's so fucking dumb. Like, my percentage, I don't even know. Like, we did what do you call it? The 16 and me or whatever it is that Israel said. When I did one of those things, and it's fucking stupid. Like, I'm as much a percentage like this percentage that I am that percentage. Like someone like say, I don't know. Like, I'm not talking about where you identify it as. I understand. Like, say someone like Stephen Curry, he would represent him. He would feel that he's black, and I get that. But if you were to break it down genetically, which is fucking stupid to do, anyways, I'm not saying that. He's not. He's probably not. Do you know what I mean? And so to get stuck on that, like to even make it about race or ethnicity, I just think is so fucking weird, dude. And when he said it, he's like, yeah, he was playing against slow Australian white guys. And I'm thinking, what the fuck are you talking about? You fucking idiot. Like, Jesus Christ. You know? Anyways. Shout out to Brendan Shaw. I'm actually a fan, mate. When I say it to you, when I say, Jesus Christ, you're a fucking idiot, it's a term of endearment in Australia. That's a term of endearment. So don't get offended. Don't get offended, mate. It's a term of fucking endearment. So yeah. Anyways, guys, I've got to go. I had a fucking blast. Let's keep doing this. Thank you so much, guys, for joining me. Please come back tomorrow for the fight companion. We're going to be doing the main card, and I'll catch you guys soon. Thank you so much, guys. Take care.